Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of AACRAO's Credential Chats. Today, we are joined by Holly Zanville. Holly has been a lot of things in this world, but currently, she is the founder lead of the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library and research professor at the George Washington University Institute of Public Policy. Holly, thank you so much for being with us.
I'm so glad to join you today.
Well, and we are just really excited to have you and dive into this Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. And for any of our audience who haven't already gone and clicked around, could you just give us a heads up of what to expect? What is the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library?
Well, we're a special collections library. When we set it up, we weren't sure whether to call it a clearinghouse, a repository. There were other names people came up for it, and we set it on library because we felt that we needed to have a place where we could aggregate and curate information that's out there to explain what's going on in the Learner Week ecosystem on the assumption that we shouldn't be working so much in silos. Credential providers should not be in a silo, separate from employers and workforce, separate from the policy world, separate from the database and data standards world, separate from communications technology, that there are many components that make up the larger learn and work ecosystem, and that we needed a place to try to map some of this information out. What were the special projects and innovations underway? Who were the organizations doing the mainline work? What policies, frameworks, et cetera, shape this kind of work? And what can we learn about that if we want to collaborate with others in a time at which there was more and more interest over the last several years in let's collaborate, but we don't know who to collaborate with. So often when I was working in these spaces, I would go to, I wasn't even sure what some of the new terms meant. I could guess them, but I felt like I should know what they meant. So I would go to Wikipedia. And most of the terms I would type into Wikipedia were not there. And then I thought, well, should I go to sort of the encyclopedias? So the information was not there. And then I thought, well, I'll call a friend. So I would call members of my network to say, what does this mean? Is this important? Who should I talk to? Almost like what a journalist would do. And I realized that call a friend was not the best approach, and probably there were others doing the same thing. And that wouldn't it be great if we had a place, a centralized information aggregator where you could go get information, have it be coded and classified, and find out information about who else is working in this space. So that was really the beginning of the library. And if you go there, you'll find many components of it, all trying to explain how does the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library work, and how can I function more effectively in it? And increasingly, how can we get information we all need out of it? So that's sort of the short story of it all.
Yeah, and as somebody who's oftentimes at the other end of the phone a friend call, I think
Yes.
that I don't
Yeah.
scale well, and I don't even give the same answer every time. So I think that for consistency and
Exactly.
scale, that this makes a lot of sense. And I think one thing that you said that is going to be really familiar to an ACRO audience is notions of credential confusion. Just what is this stuff? How do we get to is there standardization? Is there not? If not, why not? And just how do we make meaning and make sense of these things so we can, just accelerate our adoption implementation? And at the same time, I guess it might be helpful to just back up a few steps for somebody who's saying, okay, learn and work ecosystem. I've been tuning into some of these credential chats. I've been reading some of the ACRO, communications about this. I'm on the listserv. I get the learning part. What's the working part? What does this all have to do with learning records? Is this very much a part of the things that we've been talking about with credential innovation, or is this yet another thing people need to bookmark and add to their plates?
Well, yes, they should bookmark it. We live in a complex ecosystem of learning and work. And on the work side, it's really employers and workforce, and employers and what their needs are for folks that have traditional degrees and certificates, but who also have micro-credentials and badges that are proxies for certain skills that are needed and industry certifications. Employers are very much levers for change, and they message to the higher education, to K-12 and colleges and universities about what is needed to deal with their employment changes. And so those two components, but they're not the only ones because policy is a key area. And as I mentioned, there are other key areas. So that's why we carry the banner for think of an ecosystem. You're not in it alone. You can be a wonderful credential provider, but if you're not aware of all the other components, we can't fix the issues and have a better economic and social mobility system for our up and coming students and workers if we're not fixing all areas of the ecosystem. And it's complicated work. And I do think you kind of have to bookmark it all. Not that you have to cram it in one night for a final exam. You don't have to do that. But over time, you kind of need to know, where do I go to understand how this works? And so we think a lot about synthesis of information and opening doors to bring together still disparate, fractured information that's out there, and not all of it is curated. And it's even more complicated because the bots have stepped forward. And the bots, in my mind, are great because they offer a tremendous potential, but they also bring some nuanced misinformation. They'll make certain things up. So if you have to sort of accept that, I feel like the bots are sort of like teenagers. Sometimes you can learn a lot and you can listen to them, but you kind of have to know enough information to understand what they're bringing forward. So in this kind of a very complicated technology environment that we're all sharing, information has got to be curated and pulled together and made accessible in small bites. We don't need to read 20-page reports, in my mind, or find books that are 2 years old or 3 years. I mean, that is not going to do it. And so we're all about the networks where you can literally phone a friend and look at the latest, greatest information pieces. And that's the commitment that we have at our libraries. Keep things updated, curate it, keep bringing in more and more information. And frankly, it's a kind of a wiki model where we encourage folks to let us know if they want certain information they have available at the library, or if we've got it wrong, we make it easy to fill in a form and let us know so we can keep it edited. So that's the direction we're aiming for with the library, which is still growing. I don't think we're there yet, but we've improved it a lot in the last couple of years.
I'm definitely a fan of it, and it definitely, if I have thousands of bookmarks, and going to the library is a more efficient way to start out than scanning my bookmarks for sure. And but when we think about what people are bookmarking, I think on the innovative credentials listserv that and community practice at AACRAO stewards, some of the most popular topics that we have are people who are seeking out frameworks at their institutions. What are other
Yes.
people doing? People are looking for policy examples. People want to know, what does the research say? Are these going to be
Yes.
some of the kinds of resources that people can find at the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library?
They are. We struggle a lot to organize information so that you can search it by keyword. We have an AI bot. We've been training since last summer. The bot is coming along. You can search by stakeholder groups. We've identified 26 different stakeholder groups. They have much interest in common, but they also have unique interests as well. And so we're trying to put research major reports that are coming forward, and so that we can classify and code them. Because if you go to the organization that produced the report, if you know to go to their website, or you see the report advertised or marketed, it's a better word for it, you can go there, but it's not coded, it's classified, and it won't tell you what other related reports are out at 5 other websites. So this is a problem because we're living in silo land still, and it would really be helpful if we could somehow synthesize and pull it together. And the bots are not there yet. They can pull some of the information together, but not all of it. So yeah, we have research, we have on over 400 initiatives, which are special projects that are working in different areas of the ecosystem. We have a glossary of over 550 terms that are related and broken out by the key components of the ecosystem. We have some topic reports because some folks don't really even know very much about it. It's like 1 to 2 pages of information as background. So we don't have to pass the buck and send you to another website where you may or may not get good information. And some of the websites are not, I would say, are not up to, they're holding tanks, but it's hard to find information.
I
That's
know
my,
that makes a lot of sense when you described it as, one of the early sort of conceptualizations as a clearinghouse, that this is not a free-for-all library. This is a curated library, with folks like yourself, ensuring for quality of what people are getting. I also think, Holly, about, a lot of folks who ACRAO members are not just working in higher ed, but also participating themselves as learners in higher ed.
Oh,
And
yes.
so, it is for folks who are, doing master's thesis work, dissertation work, if they're paying attention to the space of credential innovation, is the Learning Work Ecosystem Library a good resource for them early on as far as, lit reviews? Is it a good resource for them as far as potentially gaining exposure for their own work as they are writing and publishing?
Down the road, we think definitely yes. We do think that the library is can be used as an instructional tool. And for a lot of graduate students coming up who may be seeking jobs in some of the think tanks, particularly research and think tanks, it's really difficult in my view to have the experience, but also the knowledge maybe gained, let's say in graduate school, in a particular discipline like economics or political science or education, name your discipline, when in fact most of the work in the ecosystem, sorry, my cat has arrived. Most of the work in the ecosystem is interdisciplinary, and it would be really helpful in my view to have a site like the library that could explain to you, um, you know, how is all this related? Why do I need to know that? What can I just focus on credentials and providers? No, if you're going to work effectively, you do need to understand the employer world very well and how policy impacts all that, and then some other areas as well. So we think that the library can be useful as an instructional tool down the road. Whether or not we feature individual authors, we don't know right now. We don't list journal articles individually. We talk about the topics, not the people so much. That may be a need we need to add in later on. Uh, um,
Well, and I really appreciate your just iterative approach to this, as you just kind of modeled right there in your answer, as well as, you have kind of hinted that this has been an iterative project since the beginning.
yes.
You said the word silo multiple times, that we need to not be doing work in silos, that's how we have really time-consuming, expensive redundancies. And so, this thing that started off as its own sort of entity has really evolved very quickly to be very much in the same, sphere in collaborative space with groups such as ACRAO. Do you mind just, kind of explaining some of that iteration to us?
Well, from a standpoint of productivity, it makes total sense to produce a report or an area of expertise in a silo where you may have a codified group of researchers and work groups that are working on something. But once you've developed that, how do you share it with the world? And that's the point at which a lot of us take issue. Do you hold it in your own website and make everyone come to you if they know who to come to? Or do you pass it off so it gets synthesized and it gets added into a bucket with a lot of other similar work, so that can be mapped and that work can be synthesized and made available more broadly? And I would say that's the journey we're trying to see information in. So the information itself is not siloed. How the information is developed is, in my mind, is done in lots of different ways. But from the standpoint of AACRAO, who's particularly committed to learning and employment records and has helped to assemble the LAR Accelerated Coalition of 12 very important, I think, high-level organizations that have tremendous amount of expertise and resources they've developed. But when it came time to put together an inventory that added up what are all the efforts that they're working on, that took some time to pull that together. Furthermore, one organization doesn't necessarily have all the IT strength because they have so many other priorities to maintain that at their website. And then why should they? When there's 12 organizations, maybe going to the third party, which is in the library, a more neutral convener, put the stuff there. And the other thing is, when we were helping them develop their LAR inventory, we said, do you want to list LER work that is being done by other organizations? The 12 organizations, as important they are not the only ones doing LER work. And so they said yes. So we said, we'll bring value add from the library. We'll collect all of the inventory of what the 12 are doing, and we'll bring in examples of work that we've identified in the library as also in that space, and put it all in there in different sections so people know who's doing what, feeling that was a value add that we could do, because those 12 organizations honestly didn't know all the work that was being done elsewhere. And they're too busy to go search around. So on the other hand, when you have librarians and et cetera, we can go search around and curate and code it and add it in, and so that you have more of, as I call ourselves, an information aggregator. And I have found that is providing a service that we didn't have before. And maybe others will come to the fore. I think they will. We're seeing more special collections, but I think that's the name of the game is nobody has too much time to read. They want it put together if possible, but it has to be accurate and it has to be easily accessible night or day, wherever you're living, and if you're traveling internationally. So in my mind, the digital world offers us all those aspects.
Well, Holly, just thank you so much for sharing with us. And, folks, if you have a chance to meet Holly and collide with her at an upcoming conference, she is encyclopedia of the present, future, and past of this space of credential innovation. She, again, is the founder, lead of Learn and Work Ecosystem Library, as well as a research professor at the George Washington University Institute of Public Policy. Holly, thank you again so much for your time and just sharing your passion with us.
Thank you so much, Noah.
Absolutely. And everybody have a badge-worthy week. We'll see you next episode. Bye-bye.